Oh, hello, and welcome to the Dente Rigamortis podcast. I'm Review Cultist.
And I'm Dr.Leviathan.
And we're here to discuss those stories from the internet, most creepy and most pasta. Tonight's episode, Candlecove. So for those who are listening to this and are not in the know, CreepyPasta is, they are internet stories, short stories, usually like a couple paragraphs to more than a couple of paragraphs, that are generally creepy, scary stories, campfire stuff. It's kind of like the next wave of campfire stuff. It comes from the name CreepyPasta comes from people on like sites like 4chan and what have you, copy and pasting posts of these creepy stories over and over again, and eventually that became the name. It got the nickname Copy Pasta, and because they're creepy stories, somebody termed it CreepyPasta. So tonight we're doing Candlecove, which we've both read, and a couple of the other stories that came after it. Candlecove was created by Kris Straub, a webcomic writer and horror writer in general, who came up with a series of creepy stories surrounding the town of Icker Falls. In fact, Candlecove is actually part of that compilation, though it's not quite linked directly to Icker Falls. It's just in the compilation. And it's essentially done up in like a forum format, like a nostalgia TV forum, just like a thread, and talks about these people like remembering this old TV show, and like the creepiness that kind of followed it. So, Dr. Leviathan, what's your first impressions as somebody who's kind of walking into this blind, kind of? As I, Review Cultist, am a huge fan of creepypasta.
Well, yeah, it's my first creepypasta. In fact, a week ago, I didn't know what a creepypasta was. I thought it was Scarios.
Nice.
But, this was a good one for me, anyway, to start off with. It was well written, really just harkened back to a nice campfire story from, the days of our youth and whatnot. So,
fair enough.
Yeah, that was, I don't know. I don't think I answered the question, but whatever.
No, like you said, you read it and it harkens back to those campfire stories. It's one of the more, I think it's probably one of the most well done ones, because it was done by, actually wasn't even really at first a creepypasta. It was originally just a creepy short story that this guy wrote and posted on his blog, and then it just got copied and pasted across the internet and went viral and has become a creepypasta because of that. And it's got a bit of a following. So, yeah. I mean, it's even been mentioned in certain, like, even in some of the Slender Man vlogs on YouTube and stuff like that. They've tried to mention it. And then we also, the story is, so it's a bunch of people like talking about like this old show that they used to watch when they were kids in the 70s, and then at the end of it, it turns out that spoilers. At the end of it, it turned out that the one guy went to to visit his mom in the retirement home and asked her about Candlecove, and it turned out that he'd just be going to the TV, turning it to static for 30 minutes, and saying that he was watching a pirate show. And that was the big twist and creepy twist at the end of it. I don't know, when I first read it, it gave me kind of goosebumps. So, but then I kind of like I've listened to things on the radio like from Coast to Coast with George Norrie and some of that, and I've heard like ghost stories from that have just given me chills. So,
yeah, it was. Well, I mean, it was good. It was kind of drop ending.
Yeah. I know you were saying that you thought you were expecting a little darker turn.
Halfway through the story, I was like, okay, this is one sick bastard who wrote this, because I figured that it was a child killer, televising his murders and, his captivity of his victims, and, posing it as a child's program and children watching it, and it just being this horrid thing. So when I found out it was just static, I was like, okay, well, wasn't creepy when Carol Ann did it in Poltergeist, and I was a hell of a lot younger, like I was a wee tot when I saw that, so not really creeped out here. I was actually more relieved that it wasn't the ultra dark version that I had.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of like it being static, because it kind of opens up. It's like, what? Like, is it some kind of collected, like, subconscious thing that, or like a mass hallucination kind of thing, or is there some kind of underlying supernatural thing that only children can see, or something like that? But yeah. I mean, I can understand. I mean, like I can understand if somebody like reading it is just like, I don't get it. It's static. Oh, but. Yeah, I don't know. When I first read it, that the fact that it was just static and like that revelation for some reason just kind of creeped me out.
Yeah, well, and you do make a valid point with that, because it does leave it open to the imagination, and unfortunately for me, really, my imagination acted early as opposed to after,
and went to a dark place.
So by the time the story was over and I was supposed to be imagining, I wasn't anymore. I was just like, well, alright. Static.
Fair enough, yeah. Now, yeah, like we said, it started off not a creepypasta, became creepypasta. It's got a huge fan following. In fact, it's actually gotten a couple of people online do actual play, like role playing game, like horror role playing game stuff. That have actually done actual plays of it, inspired by the idea of Candlecove, as well as like Slenderbox stuff, and a lot of other creepypasta have. There's like a bunch of spin-off creepypasta stories. We actually read 2 of them. One was really short, and I don't know. I think that one actually stayed truer than the other one, which was a very long read. But it stayed a little bit. The short one stayed a little truer because it kind of followed the same kind of theme.
Well, and it didn't, unlike the longer one, it didn't contradict the source at anywhere. I mean, it sort of did, but it didn't overtly say, okay, that never happened. This did.
Yeah, the short one, which is called an anecdote from Candlecove, I believe, or Candlecove anecdote.
Yep,
yeah, a Candlecove anecdote. It's a good handful of paragraphs long, but it's essentially about this guy who doesn't remember, didn't see the static, and doesn't believe that there was static or something like that. And when he was a kid, he remembers looking for his favorite character was one of the villains in the show, Horace Horrible. And he was looking for an action figure, and he found it in this kind of weird, like he went to a yard sale, but the yard sale didn't have a house. Which when I first read it, I was just like, it kind of fell into the trope of a creepypasta, because that actually happens a lot in creepypasta, where somebody picks up the haunted item or cursed object or what have you at a yard sale.
Well, and I mean that's just
a horror
common thing in horror in general. I mean, it actually, it actually. The puzzle box was first. Well, in Hellraiser, the puzzle box was first bought at some sort of cafe or something.
Yeah,
a bar in another country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's been picked up at pawn shops before.
Well,
it's a thing that happens. Yeah.
Well, even in the Leprechaun movies, in the Leprechaun 2, I think, they actually, like, the Leprechaun and the coin and stuff like that are actually bought at a pawn shop. But the story goes is like, so he's looking for the Horace Horrible action figure. No toy company or no toy store he's ever gone to collector even can know it exists, like KB or we're professionals. We're looking at the wrong one. I think.
Oh yes, I'm looking at the actual source. There we
go. I think he says Kitty City and KB, which I'm assuming are just like, I just assumed they were toy stores or franchises or something like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to think they exist. And then he finally finds one though at a yard sale, and then thinking back on it now, he says that it was like there was no house there, and like he couldn't find the people that he'd gotten it from. But then he went to rush to his buddy's place to drop it off, or to show him.
Yeah.
And the mother comes up to the door and screams in terror of it, and tells him to go away. And then he goes home and plays with it, and the sound, apparently it has a voice box in it because it keeps.
Well, it was a
talking toy. Yeah, it was a talking action figure, but it starts getting muted or distorted, and then his mother thinks that it's like there's a cat in his room, and he doesn't really know what's going on. So obviously, and then over time, it starts kind of like wearing down or something, and he doesn't know why. And he apparently decides that because he thought he wasn't supposed to get it from that yard sale, he goes and buries it in the woods, and a tree grows over top where he buried it, and there's a bunch of flies.
In a matter of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't grow. It's a very sickly tree, and there's a bunch of flies growing, or flies swarming around it. Kind of hinting.
Foliage.
Yeah, and when I finished reading it, I was like, oh, okay, so really it wasn't that. He was. He didn't actually have Horace Horrible action figure. He had like some kind of dead animal or dying animal. Was kind of what I had assumed what it was. Was that his mind was for some reason thinking it was something else, or that's kind of where my mind went to it. Was that that he had actually, like the Candlecove sickness, like of like seeing the TV show when it was really static, had kind of crossed over to the real world again, and this time it was like he was misconceiving some dead animal. I assumed like a dead cat or a dying cat, and when he buried it, that's why the flies and stuff like that were all over the place. What did you think? Because I'm looking at your face,
wow.
And you're just like, huh, I didn't think of that.
I actually completely missed that. I thought it was just... did I mention I hadn't quite had enough coffee when I read these?
That might have explained it.
Okay. That one actually just became a lot better.
Yeah.
Because I really just thought it was rather blasé.
I'm not sure. Yeah, like I'm not sure if I'm just insinuating, but I mean, reading the last couple of paragraphs, like you kind of get the I just for some reason got the hint that like the kid was completely oblivious, but like seeing something else that nobody else was seeing, because he wanted this action figure so badly.
Well, or it's
the corruption, whatever it is, some kind of the force of Candlecove leaking in, but. Yeah, so that's the short one. I think it does stay a little bit truer to the theme of Candlecove than the other one. The other one's a longer one. It's called it's Candlecove
Tales
Experiences.
Of the Laughing Stock.
Yeah, Tales of the Laughing Stock. It's done kind of like when I was reading it, I kind of got the idea that it was almost like a noir, more noir than a creepy story.
It's almost like journal entries.
Yeah,
like.
And it kind of ignores the fact, like the ending of Candlecove, and that it was static to a point, and that the show may not have even existed. It was all in people's heads because they actually went ahead and he went and explained that yes, there was a studio that had made these shows, and had gone on for a couple of seasons, and the guy who was directing it was just utterly crazy.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of. It was a lot of writing about, or like content about like going to see like people from the show and like them just kind of like getting very agitated from his interviews.
Just
regarding the whole thing,
bringing it up.
Yeah, and like apparently even the actress who played the girl in the show, Janice. she had changed her name and like grown up, had therapy.
She changed her name. She got married, sir.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I guess she did change
In
her
a way,
name,
yeah.
but I don't think that's why.
Yeah. Sorry, she got married. Like she moved on with her life, but she had to go through therapy and stuff like that. And now she writes stories of creepy, like mystery horror stories and about pirates. Is what it says, I think, in the story.
I didn't think they were horror stories.
I could be wrong. I could be also saying.
Also, this was the first one I read, so I had even less copy on my system.
Oh, jeez. And then he eventually goes and talks with the person who apparently voiced the puppet for the Skin Taker. And the guy's like voice was never the same after the big screaming episode, which at the end of the original story. Everybody's like somebody mentions that they had a nightmare about an episode being on that was just all the puppets and whatnot screaming horrible for like hours and hours on end.
Well,
for the little girl, and the little girl looked like she had been through hours and hours of it. And then it turned out, and then like a couple of other like commenters on the thread in the story mentioned that
the same episode.
Exactly, like remember it as an episode, and the girls are like, no, that was just a dream. That was just a dream. There's no way that could be.
Episode like that would never get aired.
Yeah, exactly. And so the guy in who wrote the Tales of the Laughingstock seems to kind of give detail that it was like that was an episode, and that was the turning point for like the show getting canceled and stuff like that. And then after having that interview, like apparently the voice actor killed himself, leaving a note directly to the interviewer. So like I'm surprised that guy didn't get sent to jail or something like that for like I don't know, like I guess it I don't know.
If it was clearly open and shut suicide, I mean it's just a matter of who the note was addressed to.
Yeah.
So.
And then the story goes on, like he's apparently getting more paranoid and more like the longer he digs into it, and eventually, the last part of the story is that he reads, or it's actually not even being him who's writing the last bit of the entry. It's one of his friends because he's finally snapped and committed suicide himself over the whole incident. And what was the other part of it? What was the ending? Where it was I think it was like he'd gotten one more interview or something about
with the nephew of the
director,
crazy ass director.
Yeah, he got an interview. The reason what threw him over the edge was that he got an interview with the nephew of him, and found out that it actually was still. Yeah, that's the one thing that kind of confused me. Was it that like season 3 had actually existed, or was that it was actually still going on, or they were planning a season 3?
No. It after season 2, the director died on the set and yada yada yada. But they were going to do a season 3 anyway, and they whatchamacallit, they got made, but they never got aired.
Okay, so they still existed somewhere.
Yeah, and I think because he got the tapes from
so he was actually
a previous
watching...
dude, so I think he actually watched
he was
season
actually
3 episode or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the part. Like, I was like, when I was finished reading it, I was like, wait, so season 3, like, is there's some studio out there that's trying to bring back Candlecove, and that's why he killed himself, is because like he didn't want to live in, I don't know, something like that. Like that's kind of where my mind went again, like with that. But if it's just that he was watching the tapes all along, and that was what season 3 was, then that explains it a little bit more.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was anything quite so deep as I can't live in this world. I think it was really just a fairly typical, really, little subgenre that I like to call researching the forbidden.
Well, yeah, like that pans back to like even like Call of Cthulhu, the original story.
Well, so many.
Yeah, and other ones like that, of course.
I mean, it's just everywhere.
Where like you're digging into something and then you get in too deep, and the final revelation kind of puts you over the edge.
Exactly, and then crazy things start to happen, and it's usually slow. This one really, it was too slow.
Yeah, you were
Like, you have
saying
whole entries that are just like, nothing really happened.
Yeah.
Nothing, like, there was no escalation. You know, things hadn't gotten worse or anything. It was just, you know, I talked to people and I found out absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I figured out that it was all a dead end.
Yeah.
that was all a dead end, and I don't even know why I'm still writing this right now. I don't know. I read it. I read most of this story, and then I actually went online because there's a ton of YouTube video like channels that actually like read these creepypasta stuff. So I actually kind of cheated a little bit and went into, and listened to that, and that kind of like they go the like 9 yards. Like they have like ambient music going on or images like on the screen while they're talking and stuff like that, and it kind of gives you the atmosphere. So it was a little bit creepier when I was listening to it that way, but. I guess reading it, yeah. When I couldn't actually even really finish the story. I guess that actually makes it. I guess that actually helps your cause. It's like it is pretty slow because I read through most of it, but then kind of like had to stop and like take a break and then go back to it, and I ended up just listening to it.
Yeah, if I had done that, it might have been a little bit better. Like, don't get me wrong. All in all, it's not really bad. But it was slow, and it really just, well, it flew in the face of the ending of the source.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly.
that just kind of always gets my hackles up, because, you know...
You're not treating the material... I mean,
well,
you're taking a different light, but...
Candlecove is basically, it's all about that ending.
Yeah.
Like,
that big
so
creepy
many
little...
creepy little stories are, like, I mean, going back to the... campfire stories. How many campfire stories rely on that, you know,
yeah,
twist
like, and that child was me! Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, to kind of, you know, just fly in the face and say, well, you know, the main reason you read Candlecove, I'm going to say that didn't happen, you know, like that. Well, okay, fine, but...
It's
do something better than this.
Maybe try and find some way to connect them. Like it's like maybe make this kind of a delusional. Like he's doing all these interviews and stuff like that of just a bunch of people that are just delusional. I don't know. Maybe
he's talking to a bunch of mental patients.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
As it turns out, like last entry could be like this guy has actually been in a mental. Like he's been like envisioning like going across country and stuff. He's actually just a patient in a mental ward with a bunch of other people.
You know,
that would have been really disturbing.
Wouldn't that have been awesome?
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's so weird because they all just kind of meet up at like about 4:00 in the afternoon and
and could have done subtle things throughout the whole thing where he you know, like described what they were dressed in, and they were always dressed in something similar to the person before, and it was always all in white. You know, just go with that classic asylum imagery for your mental patient.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we really just made it better. Well, we could have.
We just brainstormed an
better
improvement
of this.
Yeah. Maybe make it a little bit more of a creepy horror-y story kind of thing than just a guy doing a detective thing and going too deep.
Yeah.
And ignoring the fact that Candlecove doesn't exist, it's just all in the collective unconscious or some other unexplained anomaly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so
because I mean, as much as I, you know, laughed at, you know, oh, it's a kid watching static, not really creepy. With the, you know, ability to, you know, keep thinking like, okay, well, why are all these kids watching the same static at the same time
and the same show and getting the same imagination,
the same thing, yeah.
And these are different. These are people that didn't know each other until they went onto this forum.
Yeah, that can be creepy. Whereas, you know, something that you can actually find VHS copies of, less creepy.
Yeah.
It takes away from the whole unknown thing.
Oh yeah, there was actually one part in this story. He got the tapes initially. And they started off as static, and I was like, that would have been so cool if it had just been static entirely.
Well, and you're never
Because-
told that that wasn't the case.
Yeah, because it suddenly abruptly went from static to the show.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean,
What if
it was a blank tape and he was just watching a blank tape? But they never tell you he was watching a blank tape.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been funny if well, not funny, but it would have been, would have kept the canon of the original,
Story,
the source, if his friend who wrote that final entry had have said, you know, his ramblings about these tapes, I watched one, it was nothing but static.
Yeah, I gotcha, yeah.
You know, because that would have been the exact same story, but it would have kept the solidarity of the original source.
Concept, yeah.
Yeah.
The original theme and concept.
It would have been a nicer homage to the original story to do it that way, and I think that's honestly what both of these extra ones were trying to be. Were, you know, like, oh, this was really good, I think I can add to it.
Exactly, yeah. Like, and again, that's kind of one of the reasons why I like the first one, or the shorter one, better than this one. It's just because it does keep I mean, while the writing. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about the writing, because that's one of the reasons I brought you on, was because you're you're a little bit more literarily learned, or I just fumbled that. You're a little bit more well learned when it comes to like literary works, and like writing and stuff like that, and editing and stuff like that. So, like, what's your impressions on that? Like,
Okay, well, first I'd like to clarify I'm self-taught.
yeah.
If I am learned.
Well, you're self-learned. But I mean, like, you read a lot more fiction than what I read. I mean, I read like Lovecraft and short stories on the internet.
I just have more variety.
Exactly, yes. And again, just to be clear for anybody listening to this, we don't, like, we're doing this discussion because I would like to see a discussion done
because no one
all
else
these
has
stories.
done it.
And it doesn't seem like a lot of people have done it. So, yeah. That's why I wanted to do this podcast in the first place. So, we're discussing. So yeah, your impression. Oh, well, let's do like from the first one, from the original source to the short one and the long one.
The first, like, you know, just straight up Candlecove. That one was. It was well written. I actually really liked the forum post way that they went. It kind of had. Well, it gave it a feeling that, you know, more. Well, I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. It made it feel like more people were sharing the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Gave that impression that it wasn't just one guy. I didn't really get that from the language in the posts. It was all the same guy, you know, doing it. It was one man's words, but with different names. Honestly, if you took away all the names, made them the same name, it wouldn't have looked weird. It would have just been like, well, why is he having a conversation with himself? Honestly, that's the only part that would be off.
Same writing style for each post.
Yeah, same writing style, same kind of language, no individual identity per poster.
Gotcha.
That's really, and I mean, don't get me wrong, that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, considering that this was, you know, not some published book,
yeah. It was having he had a story to tell,
and he told it well.
Yeah.
Like, it is well written, but I'm just, you know, that's one little thing. It didn't take me out of the story that was being told. It's just something that I noticed, and having noticed it, I just can't not see it.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was, like, I remember, because this one I read, you know, in the wee hours of the morning when I couldn't sleep. And, like, even after I got to the ending, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't, like, shaking, covering with a cover over my head, but I was like, okay, this is genuinely, you know, getting a little, not out of my, like I say, it wasn't terrifying, but it was creepy. It was a campfire story.
Yeah.
It had this. It had a
You get
similar
goosebumps.
effect.
You get little goosebumps like from certain parts of it, but I mean, or some people would get goosebumps from it, or some people would get chill. But it wouldn't like it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to invoke. Where it's trying.
And that may have also been why I enjoyed it way more than either of the other two, was because I had better ambiance when I read that one.
Yeah. And really, that's what you're supposed to do when you're reading these stories: is read them in a dark room, all alone,
Well,
with the glow of your monitor.
A good ghost story can scare the bejeebers out of you, whether you're reading it at home all in the dark with the creepy ambiance and everything, or standing in the line at the grocery store.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
And I genuinely think that the first, the Candlecove could have done it standing in line at a grocery store. Because it was good.
Nice.
That's really the long and the short of it. There was definitely nothing bad about the writing.
Okay. So how about the short one? Anecdote.
Anecdote.
The anecdote. Leviathan is speechless.
Well, I just don't know how to say it, because, the character is clearly a kid.
Yeah.
But it also seems to have been written by a kid.
Which is very possible. I mean, a lot of these stories are
exactly
written by amateurs, so...
So I'm not gonna, berate anyone for being a child.
No.
But it's definitely... there's just little things like, I don't even have a word for it.
This is actually I think one of the reasons I chose this one, because as one of the as a runner up for the original, is so that because it does kind of show the one side of creepypastas where they're short, possibly not well written, but to me I thought it had some potential in terms of theme.
Well,
whereas the other one,
it had a good idea. It was it definitely had that.
Had spirit.
That being said, I missed the freaking point.
the punchline that I came up with when I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I am not stupid. So the fact that I completely bypassed it means that, could have used a little more, just a touch heavier handed.
Okay.
Than what it was.
May not be so subtle about it.
Exactly. Now, that being said, I don't ever want to tell anyone to not be more subtle, because media these days, subtlety is a lost art.
Yeah.
It's just completely out the window.
Exposition, Michael Bay.
I was thinking Clash of the Titans remake.
The
Goddess of Exposition.
Oh, God. Oh. That's not creepypasta.
All right, before we get sidetracked completely.
Yeah. Okay, so good heart, but a little bit maybe could have used a little bit more work on the.
Yeah, if this was like a young teenager, then honestly has a lot of potential to do really well if they keep at it.
Yeah.
Or if they kept at it, because I have no idea when it was written.
But... Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's why I'm not actually mentioning people's names who've written these, except for the ones that I'm dead set on, because we've been looking at these stories through creepypasta.wiki or creepypasta.com, which are they're essentially collection, or just the collection of them. So unless they say otherwise, I'm not sure who wrote this stuff originally.
Yeah, it's, but yeah, if it was an early attempt by someone, it's good. you've got, you know, they can improve.
Yeah.
But they're already at a really good starting place. You know, you just have to learn how to get your point across clearly while still maintaining some subtlety.
Yeah.
And it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. And how do you think about the? Is anything different about the? Anything different to say about the longer one?
It definitely seemed like it was written by someone in an age category between the two. Like, he was younger than the guy who wrote Candlecove, but he wasn't as young as the guy who did the anecdote.
Probably like maybe college level or something like that.
Yeah, tough to
pin it is
down
hard to,
really, but it's just honestly, edit.
Yeah.
You know, if there's something that has no point, get rid of it, because all it's going to do is bore people, and when people are bored, they stop doing what they're doing, like what you did.
Yeah.
You stopped reading.
Yeah.
I didn't stop reading because I had a deadline.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was actually a part of it where he does actually like mention that like he ran into a couple of things that were dead ends, and doesn't mention really what those were. Just says that there were dead ends.
Yeah,
I can't remember where it was if it was in the paragraphs, but then yeah, like you said, like there's a couple of them that kind of like they just lead to dead ends.
Yeah, and
although at the same time it can be mentioned that, I mean, like, well, what part of it would you say was dead end? Like when he met up with the actress or the set designer? Or
really, the actress didn't bring much to the story.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's more that there shouldn't have... It's not that I think that there should have been fewer words or fewer interviews. I really just think that they should have done something. Like, that there should have been an escalation. Because it's like when you look at, or when you read any of those, you know, researching the forbidden stories.
Yeah.
There's a steady progression of, you know, delving into the madness and just, you know...
The spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one really didn't have that. It didn't have the growing insanity.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, it did seem like until the guy was keeping his cool up until like the very last bit of it, and then he started going a little bit worse. But then again, like later on in the story, he actually found tapes and it wasn't until the tape showed up that he started going.
Yeah, you know, that might work for the narrative, but reading I didn't like the pacing.
Yeah. Okay.
Is basically what I guess it boils down to, because it works when you think about it in the context of the story, but while you were reading it, I was just like, God, you're boring. Why did I start with the long one?
Wait, you actually started with this one first? Oh.
Well, of the two
extras. Yeah.
I think I actually bounced over and read the action figure one
first,
like about halfway through.
Nice.
And just went back and I was like, okay, I've got that one out of the way, so I feel like I've done something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was boring. I mean, it had its charm, and it was well written, but there was no point to like half of it. And again, it's not that I think that if it didn't have a point it should be gotten rid of. I think if it didn't have a point, it should have been given a point.
Yeah.
That's probably the most accurate thing I can say, is that, you know, there's some pointless stuff in there and it should still be there. It should just have a reason to be there, and none of it does.
Yeah.
Well, again, not none of it, because some of it does. And I don't want to, harp on any...
Rain on somebody's parade if they're
cause...
if that's what they wanted to. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Well, and whenever anyone writes something, they make choices, and they always have reasons to make these choices. So, I understand that you might have reasons, but it was boring to read.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So now that we've done our little discussion about that, what did you think of the Candlecove legacy, like Candlecove and its legacy, as like from what you've like? Do you think like it's is it where was I going with this? Is it like a how do you what do you think of just since this is you're at the beginning of your journey into creepypasta, because we're going to be doing more of these these episodes.
I'm genuinely excited to, sift through what I'm sure is going to be a lot of mediocrity and some crap, but to sift through it and find those diamonds in the rough, those really good, fun ones. I think it's going to be, just in general, reading through creepypasta is going to be something I do on my own now.
Yeah.
Just because, you know what? Yeah, like I say, I'm probably going to read a lot of crap, but
there's some gems.
I'm going to find some good ones,
yeah.
And, because, from what I understand, this is quite the phenomenon now, so...
Yeah, it's been going on for
a lot
of
people
years,
writing these things, so... With that many people, there's going to be some really creative and, twisted, sick guys who go the way of a child killer.
Yeah. I think of that, yeah. Yeah, no, personally, from what I've read, from my experience of reading these, there are a couple of them that are just like, wow, this is not a supernatural thing. This is primarily a Criminal Minds episode.
Well, and some of those are sometimes really, that's just the scariest way to go.
Yeah, human mind is a scary thing at times. All right. Yeah.
But just as a little side to, in general, the 3 Candlecove stories we read.
Yeah,
there are basically like any franchise or any horror movie really should have just been left in the hands of the creator.
Yeah.
And that's.
But it really what we read, the last two things that we read were really just kind of well, that's what creepypasta really is to some point is fan fiction.
Well, so. And they were homages, and that's one of the great things about the internet. You can do an homage to something like Candlecove or what have you, and you can share it with the world. So,
yeah. It's actually interesting because. I know, just on another note, Candlecove itself, originally ichorfalls.com, which is the website where it all started off on, had all their stories on it. But in the last year or so, Kris Straub's been doing something with another project, and he seems to have made ichorfalls.com completely Candlecove centric, in that when you go to the website, instead of going to having a menu with all the different stories that he's just throws on there, because it was a blog at one point, it's just the Candlecove story, and at the very bottom there's a little an image of a GIF of a TV box with static. But yeah, so it does seem like this one. Yeah, like I said, it's definitely one of the more popular stories out there that I've heard. Somebody's can totally comment.
Okay,
that I'm
so in other words, any bad things I've said about this, people are just gonna hate me now.
Oh, it's the internet. They'll do that anyway.
They already hate me.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure we'll get something or some kind of comment, whether it be good or bad. Actually, I think that. Do you have anything else to say about Candlecove for this discussion?
No, not really. Just, again, in general, I'm looking forward to
some more
dipping into this creepypasta pool and
seeing
what's there.
Yeah. We plan on doing this as a series. Like I said, I love creepypasta. I've loved it for a couple of years now. I've read a lot of them. Leviathan here doesn't or hasn't read. This is his beginning, so this is kind of his. This could very well just be his journey into the depths of the internet.
I'm familiar with the internet.
Yeah, but I mean, the darker depths.
This could be, for all we know, this could be my own personal, researching the forbidden story.
Exactly, yeah. You made it. Oh, God. All right, so with that, that's it for tonight. But if you liked what you heard, leave us a comment below or send us one to aldenterigamortis at gmail.com. That's how it's spelled, aldenterigamortis at gmail.com, where you can also send us suggestions for other creepypastas that we should discuss on the show. Until next time, I'm your host, Review Cultist.
And I'm Dr. Leviathan.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.